Hello and welcome back to Robbie's Arcade. Today we're on to look at X-Men Children of the Atom. It was one of the first big steps between Capcom and Marvel working together in this genre of beat-em-up games. These days we take for granted that both of these two companies work together so closely for some incredible beat-em-up games. But it wasn't always the case, and one of the first big forays into that arena was X-Men Children of the Atom, or COTA. And I'm not going by what people think COTA means now, I mean Children of the Atom. Now, Children of the Atom is one of those games where plot kind of takes a little bit of a backseat. If you're a comic book follower, there was a similar plot to this, but this game is not indicative of that original comic. The game itself features nothing but Marvel characters, both villains and heroes, and the bosses are Juggernaut and Magneto, two characters that, of course, in later games, we can't even imagine Juggernaut as a boss. He's just some thick character that happens to be ridiculously strong. Now, this game utilised lots of assets of the Street Fighter series, the combo system, the super combo system, counters, that kind of thing, the energy bars at the top, but introduced whole new gameplay mechanics that were kind of unseen before in other games. So, for example, the idea that you could jump ridiculously high, breakable floors, the combo system, of course, as already mentioned, and the fact that projectiles were now this incredibly dramatic thing, whereas up until now in Street Fighter games, you had your Hadoukens and your occasional fireball, but nothing like what you see in X-Men and, of course, the games that followed. Now, later on this channel, I will be featuring Marvel Superheroes, the game that came out the year after this, that really refined the whole dynamic of Capcom and Marvel working together. But I do think, even though this isn't as good, this is still very much a good game and definitely one to check out. So first things first, let's get some credits inside this and get this game playing. Now, we'll go with Old Faithful Wolverine there. I know everyone goes for it. That's your Ken and Ryu equivalent. Another interesting thing, just to highlight there, is the fact this game gives you the option of manual or automatic. And what that means in real terms is that now super moves and standard moves can now be performed just by rapidly bashing buttons. So that was a nice thing that the arcade did introduce. I personally don't like using it, but it's worth showing you just the sort of things you can do just by rapidly tapping the buttons, managing to perform a lot of these moves without even having to know how to perform them. So again, it was nice that they were thinking about people that didn't quite know what they were doing. Now, I've gone into the dev sets and put this to the easiest setting just so I'll be able to talk to you and play at the same time. But take my word for it, this game is not as easy as this generally. And I remember as a kid, me and my brother wasting a lot of 50p pieces in this game. Now, talk about some of the facts later on, but straight away, some of the interesting points about this game. First and foremost, those wonderful graphics, beautiful looking graphics there. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, Omega Red has pretty much destroyed my energy bar. He actually perfected me almost. Now, maybe I shouldn't have changed that setting in the devs there to play around with the difficulty, but it is definitely worth noting there that damage that was done by Omega Red and how fast that round was. So what's quite nice is the game's given me certain tips there during the continue screen. And what we'll do is we'll select someone else. Let's go with... do you know what? I don't think I've ever played as a Sentinel. This can only end badly. But the game itself is insanely playable. I mean, people that up until this point had been playing standard Street Fighter games didn't really understand a lot of the mechanics of this, something that grown late. For example, the giant jumps and the huge projectiles. When the game first came out, people were just openly complaining that the game was just too hard, just because there was no way you could get past all these characters flinging their projectiles so randomly all over the shop. But me personally, I took to it almost like a duck to water. I found the game both playable and, moreover, exciting to watch as a spectator. Something I thought Street Fighter, although it didn't have the equivalent of. What's it? There we go, taking care of him there. But the game, what I quite liked as well is it should be argued that the story of Street Fighter, although it's not bad, it's not exactly original. It's, oh, we're all entering a tournament, oh, we all got to win, the end. But at least this introduced the characters' personalities at better, and it was based on an already existing franchise. So that having that fallback of that narrative to go with meant that the plot could be a little bit deeper, and therefore the endings felt a little bit more significant too. And also the speed of the characters. Have you noticed the speed difference there? In Street Fighter, when it came to slow or fast, the difference wasn't that big. You had your Zangiefs, your Dal Sims, that's the kind of thing that moved at a snail's pace, and you had your slightly faster characters, Chun-Li, Vega. But not to the degree that we see in this. The speed of the characters in this and the slowness of the powerful characters, when we look at Juggernaut and other characters, we do see a huge difference. I'll be honest, I'm getting a bit repetitive there, aren't I? Let's pause this a second and talk about some of the facts. It's always nice to talk about the facts of these games. So straight away, X-Men Children of the Atom was released in 1994. So just 1 year before their big hit Marvel Superheroes. It was obviously made with Marvel and Capcom working together on their newer board that was used in Street Fighter, namely the CPS-2. Something I'm looking forward to talking about on the channel later. This game also actually had a secret character in the form of Wolverine. There was a code that you could input by highlighting, I think it was Spiral, and there was up, up, down and all this stuff. And you could play as Akuma from the Street Fighter franchise, something Capcom insisted upon, something that was also carried over to home versions. Now the home versions let you play as the boss with a code, but you couldn't play as the bosses in this, Juggernaut and Magneto. On top of that, once you defeated Magneto, there was actually an animation and a placement of characters that had to be removed due to inappropriacy. In the arcade, one of the early versions, once you defeated Magneto, an acolyte would run onto the screen and stand there prominently and just kind of in front of Magneto, and it actually kind of looked like she was fondling his crotch, and that is a true story. Look it up on Google, it's all there. On top of that, the game also featured, of those two bosses, the ability to not only fight against them, but play as them in a mirror mode in the home version, something of course that wasn't available in the arcade, which was a shame. But you were able to play as the same character with the inputting of a code. Lastly, the game's assets, lots of digital assets used in this game for all of these characters that we see on the screen, were reused in subsequent games. Once again, Marvel vs Street Fighter, Marvel Superheroes, Marvel vs Capcom, Marvel vs Capcom 2. So many games reuse the animations in this. So although a lot of those games, you know, both by recognised reviewers and the public as being better games than this, it still utilised all of these assets. So both Capcom and Marvel got their money's worth. I say reputable reviewers, let's go back to CVG, let's have a go at them, because I don't know what was going on during the 80s and 90s, but they had a very strange reviewing structure, because they gave this game 3 out of 5, which everyone else gave it much, much higher, and it kind of reeked of dodginess, and it was something that was really going on with CVG over the years. And I do recommend you look into Guru Larry's coverage of CVG as well. Fantastic stuff there, very interesting, very informative. But let's get back into the game, shall we? So here we go, defeated Samurai, and of course, like a lot of arcade games, all you have to do is hold the buttons to skip things a lot quicker. Now, Spiral was one of these characters who kind of came out of nowhere, who has not really appeared in many other games, Spiral. She's been in, I think, in a minor role in one of the X-Men movies, but she's not really a character that's heavily featured in the universe of Marvel. And there we go, I managed to get one of those super moves out there as well. Now, again, there were lots of little nods to the comic book franchise in this, from the backgrounds to a lot of the things that were said. Thanks, Bub. Anyone that's ever watched Wolverine or read a comic knows that. And the Sentinels as well was a figure that was, you know, I would argue very, you know, quite brave of them to introduce the Sentinels as a playable character, given they were an enormous antagonist. Look at the damage being done there. But you know what, let's wrap things up. I'm looking forward to telling you about Marvel and hopefully comparing these two games, and not just in that Versus they released. But otherwise, this is definitely one of those games that you really should check out, because it's the beginning of what all the other games become. That none of Marvel vs Street Fighter, X-Men vs Street Fighter couldn't be anything without this game existing. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to pop in the comments any other games that you can think of that you want me to feature on the channel. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for watching.